Welcome to the Dire Wolf Show, where we believe that America is exceptional and that our constitutional rights should never be infringed. I am Dire Wolf. On our show, we bring you the truth and debunk fake news. If you love laughing at the insanity of the regressive left, sit back and relax. Boy, do I have a show for you. Welcome back, Wolfpack. Dire Wolf here for our weekly news recap. Behind Enemy Lines on YouTube, where speech is not free and the truth is demonetized.
Did you say behind Enemy Lions? What?
Lions.
Oh, no.
And alongside me is my co-host, the jokester and producer, Fox Trevize. How you doing, buddy?
I'm at least some of those things. I'm doing pretty good. How are you doing?
All right. And we have a guest today, the White Lion, the one, the only, the myth, the legend, the White Lion, who's always in the comment section, who's also now on the show. How you doing, buddy?
May or may not be an enemy lion.
Yeah, I may be an enemy lion. I'm not sure yet.
Okay. So, thank you to everyone who makes the show possible. That's Kaylet, Orime, Nathan, Cameron, Tetris Freak, Slowpoke, Thunder Erican, who's female, so I hear, White Lion, he's on the show, and also a special thank you to Timberwolf for the donations and boosting us on the Discord. We very much appreciate it. You all can support us financially or just simply like, share, subscribe, bits, whatever. You know, support us. We appreciate it. And boosting us.
Sounds fantastic.
I'm getting some feedback.
Yeah,
for you.
Like a microsecond. It's okay. Just move on.
Okay, cool. So before we get into our first stories, and by the way, sorry for the long break, guys. We've had both Fox and I have been pretty busy and having family things to take care of. We will be back on a regular schedule, hopefully, starting this next week. But
we look forward to having a more stabilized schedule over the summer, right? We've been talking about going back to doing Dire Wolf Thursdays, discussion with Dire, and maybe doing some more gaming stuff, bringing that back. Everybody had a very busy year. Dire and I both had a massive change in our job responsibilities the last 6 months, but things are stabilizing out. So
exactly. So we expect to be having a more stable schedule. But let's get to our first funny video before we get into our stories. This is a hey kiddo, close the door. So we had a attempted robbery, armed robbery. Some young kids with what is either a fake or real gun tried to what looks like carjack someone, and it did not turn out the way they expected. Make sure the volume's on.
Let's see here. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Ooh! Oh!
Oh!
World Star Hip Hop!
Knee on the neck.
Some toxic masculinity for you. I'll let you guys decide which person in this video you think had too much toxic masculinity. But
Awesome.
So,
all right.
Yeah, I mean that's crazy that you got a video with 1.6 million views on Twitter, Dire. If our other videos got that many views.
Yeah, if only. Maybe we should just.
I'm alleging that this is Dire. Clearly.
All right. So, changing the subject. Let's do our first
Dire's
story.
like moving on. Definitely not me. Totally not me. So, our first story tonight is, you may have guessed it, you know it, you love it. Taser, taser, taser!
Boom, bang.
So tonight, as a little PSA, we are going to be discussing things that are tasers and things that are not tasers. First up, we have a taser, which is a taser, and things that are not taser. Our first one on the list is a gun. That is not a taser.
Yes, they're much louder. Kill you a lot more. Definitely.
Now, for those of you, I was surprised if any of you didn't know, but there's a reason why we're going over this PSA this week, and that is because of a story that happened last Sunday. Not this Sunday, last Sunday. Let's hear. So last Sunday, 20-year-old Dante Wright was pulled over in Brooklyn Center, Minneapolis, for a traffic violation related to expired registration tags, not related to a was an air freshener, as was misreported widely by the media and not fact checked by anybody.
You know where that came from? I know where that came from.
I know where it came from too, but I think you probably researched it better than I did. So why don't you say it?
So that story point came only from he was on the phone with his mom while driving. When he got pulled over, he told his mom, "Oh, I'm getting pulled over because they saw my air freshener," and the mom then passed it on as being the reason.
Yeah, so like, I mean, definitely the last time I got pulled over, I lied to my mom about why I got pulled over. I told her I was not speeding. It's just like a thing that you do with your mom when you get pulled over and she asks why. But yeah, your mom is not a reliable source.
And then also, he is not a reliable source in that case. And also, why would someone report that? Because it's absurd and there's no evidence to support it. I could say anything. I could say I got pulled over because I'm white, and unless there's some sort of evidence supporting that accusation, you wouldn't report it as true.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the police report and the probably they called in or ran the plates to find out that the tags were expired, and I'm guessing that the history on running those numbers or calling it in, I'm guessing that does not reflect that the pullover was due to a air freshener.
Yes.
But it did highlight a unique thing though, that that is actually a law in Minneapolis, right? So people looked this up and they were talking about it. And there's a lot of discussion about like, well, it's a stupid law that the police shouldn't have pulled them over. No. We have a whole thing of government that makes the laws. It's called the legislature. You got that at the city level, you got that at the state level, and the federal level. The cops are not legislators. There's actually a movie about that called Judge Dredd. I don't think that's the world that we want to live in. So the cops do not get to make decisions about laws. Now, they are free to retire if they feel that the laws are becoming unconstitutional, and we highly encourage them to do that. But it is not their position to innocuous laws that are really just annoying more so than oppressive. Things like you're having like stupid things on your rearview mirror or whatever. That's not really up for the cops to decide. You know, Lucy's on the streets of New York, or fentanyl overdoses, or just really gun crimes, things like having illegal guns. That's not really for the cops to make that kind of game time decision about like, well, you know, I know that we have this whole elected legislature, right? You know, democracy and all that. I'm just going to say, nah, like I'm the dictator now. We're just going to ignore this law. That's not the place for the cops. If people have problems with these onerous laws that are ridiculous, I can guarantee you it wasn't a Republican that made the law that you can't have a dangly thing on your rearview mirror. Usually those kinds of laws are liberal policies, but I could be wrong on that. So
we do always praise the cops that choose not to enforce unconstitutional laws, like, you know, gun laws in Oregon? I forget. But or the lockdowns, the police that refuse to enforce the lockdowns.
I don't necessarily. Well, okay, so actually, I do agree with that because those weren't laws. So that right off the bat, though, those were not laws. Those were edicts from a governor. So they were appropriately not following an unlawful order. Now, as for gun laws that are passed, I think that I would much rather to see cops resign rather than just pick and choose which laws they're going to enforce.
Well, you know, if they really wanted to make a point, they could have just hung a noose from the mirror, and then the FBI would have showed up. So,
that is a thing that I ascribe to. That if you have a problem with something, like I don't know, like voter fraud or something like that, if you just say, "Hey, there was a noose on the page," you will get so much investigation so fast. That is definitely a way to get attention on an issue.
Yep. My ballot said I could either vote for Biden or a noose. I didn't know what to do.
Mm-hmm. Come on, man. At least like one of them has a purpose, right?
Right. Just simple utilities sake. It wasn't Biden. So let's see the video related to this traffic stop.
Yeah.
So we have the view of the officer who's actually going to do the shooting.
The tasering.
Tasering, sorry. She thinks she's a 26-year vet of the police force, and she's going to pull her handgun
taser
or Glock, but she thinks it's her taser.
And we know that she thinks it's her taser because she's about to yell in a little bit. Yeah, you also hear them saying that there's a warrant for his arrest.
That's why they're arresting him.
Now, noted, there is a black officer arresting him initially, so, you know, probably a racist black guy. I'll tase you.
I'm going to tase you. That's not a taser. Oh, shit.
As I watch the video and listen to the officer's commands, it is my belief that the officer had the intention to deploy their taser, but instead shot Mr. Wright with a single bullet.
Oopsie.
That's a pretty big oopsie.
Yeah.
No matter what, and I do think that Dante is not a good person based off his history. No matter what he's done that makes him a bad person, in this case, with the information available to the police and with the intent of the police officer, what she did was wrong, and she does deserve the punishment she's going to be getting.
So there's this problem in the modern era, and I assume it was probably a problem previous eras too. I live in this one, so I'm aware of the problem. A story can have multiple things that are happening in it, right? So you can have, at the same time, that Dante is probably a scumbag. You can also have that the officer was wrong. And you can also have that it had nothing to do with racism. You can have a whole bunch of things happening at the same time, but mainstream media just cannot handle multiple narratives, especially multiple narratives that are not the narratives that they want to tell. And so you get a lot lost in the noise of the report.
Right. We are all for accountability, and we're against police brutality. However, we don't see what just happened in that video and see racism because there's no evidence of racism. We see someone who made a horrible mistake for whatever reason. I don't know what the reason was, but I know that she tried to tase him, and she actually shot and killed him. And in this case, because if she had, for some reason, had thought she was at risk of bodily injury because he was going into his car for a gun or something, if she had reasonably, then she didn't have evidence to think that he was going for a gun. But if she'd shot him and she hadn't said taser, she could have made the argument of, oh, I was in fear of my life, right? But because she clearly said taser, 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 and I'm going to tase you before shooting him, it shows that she did not feel at risk enough to believe that she needed to shoot him and that she intended to tase him. So it's pretty damning for her that it was a negligent discharge.
Yeah. Let's see. I have some other things I want to say, but I'll probably save them because you probably wrote some of them down. Let's see here.
Only.
What's that?
They're just bullet points.
Oh. Let's see here. So Dante, after she failed to tase him, Dante traveled several blocks, coming to a stop when he struck another vehicle because he drove off. The police and medical workers pronounced Mr. Wright dead at the scene, and they left Dante's body initially until they were able to come back with additional officers. There was already a Black Panthers protest going on near the location of the shooting. Why was there already? What were they protesting? What could they possibly?
They were protesting they already had a scheduled event.
Oh, that's just bad timing.
Yeah. So Joe Biden said Monday that there was no justification for the violence in Minneapolis after Dante's was shot and killed by police. So he actually made a public statement saying, "Hey, people should stop looting and stop committing acts of violence over the shooting."
But
where was this 4 years ago?
Beautiful. Yeah. Where was this? Yeah, at any point in the last 4 years.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, that is like the bare minimum a president should do. It's definitely what Trump had been doing his entire 4 years, plus a lot stronger language, and actually doing something about it. Trump actually did something about the violence, whereas not enough, but still did something. And at least had strong words for it. Whereas Biden, he makes this half-assed statement about, oh yeah, you shouldn't be. There's no justification for violence in Minneapolis. Well, shoot, you've been condemning Trump for making similar statements for the last 4 years. So now that you're in this seat, now it's okay to call out the violence. Where were you the last 4 years? It pangs of being disingenuous.
Yep. There's also kind of a side angle here with female officers. I think it was clear from the video that she was kind of a small stature. You can see her kind of compared to the other officer there. And when the much larger male officer had control of the, I guess he was the victim in this one, he had him under control, and as soon as he tried to hand off control to the female officer, she immediately lost control, and that's what prompted her to have to draw something. She had to draw a tool to help her maintain control of the situation, and that's seen to have happened quite often. That female officers will have to reach for a weapon or a taser because they are not able to maintain physical control of a suspect during an arrest.
So actually having a smaller officer in general, but definitely a female officer because they tend to be smaller, it gives you less options in an engagement, right? Because a big guy has more options of he might be able to overpower and subdue someone without having to use one of his many tools. But someone who's smaller, they don't have that option. They have to more quickly go to those non-lethals and lethals, whereas they might not have been necessary prior.
Yeah. Now, if you're a, just regular civilian, that's great to have a gun because even if you're a small woman or a big guy, you want to have the great equalizer, right? And you want to be able to defend yourself. And that's perfectly fine. But the left has been, their drumbeat the last 10 years has been, police brutality. They've been shooting and murdering people too often. Well, the way that you get less police shootings is by making sure the police are more able to control a suspect without having to resort to a gun. And that would involve physical stature. If you guys have ever been out, ever been out to a bar, the bouncer, not usually a small guy because they know they need to be able to physically control rowdy people. Similar thing should be with police officers. And it doesn't mean
they're hired for merit, and the merit is their actual physical ability to do the job.
Yeah, it's not to say that women are unable to meet that threshold. It's just that the threshold needs to be the exact same threshold that it is for men. If you can meet the test, you can do it. And I don't care what gender you are. It's just that we cannot have, in these types of situation, in what is essentially a combat role, trying to kind of pick a word that encompasses that as well as certain military positions. But some place where you are going to be in a combat situation, it cannot be that you have separate standards for men and women. It has to be one standard. Either you're qualified to handle a combat situation or you're not. Your gender is really irrelevant at that point. And this is, I think that what happened was a natural result of allowing reduced standards for females on the force.
And as I said at the beginning of that section, I said small individuals. It doesn't matter. If a small male would have a lot of the same exact problems, it would not be able to meet that standard too. So also, I don't understand. She reached over to the victim, but didn't actually grab or take control of him. What was she doing with her hands?
I don't know. I did hear from some other commentators that she may have been a trainer as well.
Yes, she was.
And clearly, it is definitionally she was unqualified, right? So I don't need to know anything about her. She is the kind of person who accidentally drew a pistol instead of a taser. So that made her unqualified to be an officer. It made her unqualified to train other people to be an officer. And so there's very few ways that I can imagine that she entered into that position legitimately because she's unqualified.
Well, and you had said earlier, so she's a trainer. How long had she been on the force? You said, I think you mentioned it earlier, but
26 years.
26 years. Wow. Because that seems like, there's
many people
no
on
way,
the force right now were trained by her in that area.
Yeah, there's no way you could have a job like that where you've been training every day or every week for 26 years on something and you don't know the difference between your tools. That would be inconceivable in any other field of work.
Yeah. There's a lot of reasons. Muscle memory. So they draw that taser differently than they draw the handgun, right? They're facing a different direction. They're on a different side. If she has 26 years of muscle memory on how to use those tools, she wouldn't have drawn the wrong weapon, unless she's very bad at her job.
Yep. So.
Or she did never do her job. She was just, she was the diversity hire, and she just kind of, did whatever was required of her. And
she did a desk job.
Here's another thing too, though, is she may well be qualified to train other people, but that doesn't make her qualified to go out and do it practically, right? So maybe I know I've done things and been trained by people who maybe are not physically capable of doing some of the things that they're training me to do, but they used to do it, or they've learned enough about it, and they are qualified to train, but they're not necessarily qualified to do.
Right, like the big fat football coaches for the NFL. Like they're not able to actually play the game, but they know the strategy and all of that.
Yeah. So again, and this is where you've got this all over the place. You're putting unqualified people into positions for diversity reasons, and you're lowering the standards to get them in there because, Joe Biden, look at what he did with the vice president. He wasn't looking at qualifications. He's like, I want a black vagina to be my vice president. That was the only.
He got the Joker.
Yes, he did get the Joker, which is kind of funny. But that is what the world has become the last 20 years. Mostly pushed by the left, is that you just you're looking for a visual representation of things. It's irrelevant what their actual skill sets are, and this is what happens. You've got that. I'm sure that they were so happy when they had their group photo of that police department, and they had a bunch of girls in it. They're like, "Oh my God, look how diverse we are!" And then I don't know. I mean, Dyer, you were saying something earlier this week about nobody had been calling for equality in police shootings, right? There's all this demand for gender equality, gender equity, and all these different fields and different things, and nobody had been calling for gender equity in police shootings, but we're getting it.
Yeah, this is actually a huge step forward in gender parity, if you think about it.
Yes, I am just beside myself right now. I've noticed that this meme I've got up here, the bullet coming out of the barrel still has a casing on it. So this is this is the FN 9mm chambered in casing. My favorite gun. All right, what else do we got on the list here? I'll be right back. But you keep going, Dyer.
ABC News wrote this article titled "Dante Wright was stopped for expired plates, but driving while black may have been his crime." So obviously the mainstream media wants to run with the narrative that he was shot because the police officers are racist. Yes, that the black police officer and must have been racist as well. So there's nothing in this video that implies that. They're just trying to stoke those flames of rioting and anger and racial animus. They want to cause violence because, as we'll discuss later on, and another news agency was pretty frank about it, people being in fear, people being angry, that's what gets them money. That is their bread and butter. They aren't personally affected by these communities that are predominantly black being burned down. They're not affected by people losing their jobs, their lives, and their businesses. They don't care that they are making people angry and suffer based on lies. They just keep printing them because that makes them their bottom line. So ABC News, go fuck yourself. This has nothing to do with race. On that topic, Sean King, he made an Instagram comment right after the shooting. And as you know, the mainstream media loves to get their hot takes off 30 minutes after the shooting and assume they know everything and make lots of lies that end up like an hour or two later being passing on the lie that Dante was pulled over for marijuana possession. I have no freaking idea where they got that from. It's not in any way involved in the story. It was just a lie. And I'm sure what the point of that lie is. But here's what the warrant actually was for. Yes, Talcum X. He loves to stoke those racial flames. The warrant said that he needed to be arrested because he had a violation of possessing a pistol without a permit in a public place, a gross misdemeanor, fleeing a peace officer by means other than a motor vehicle. So all the police officers knew when they pulled up was that he had a illegal firearm, legally possessed firearm, and that he had he had it in a public place, and that when the police were coming, he ran from them.
So this is really incredible because this happened last weekend. And last weekend, we had Joe Biden. That same weekend, he would put out like a dozen executive orders trying to ramp up gun control, sick the ATF on people, and planning a whole bunch of legislation that would destroy the Second Amendment. And that same weekend, we have the police arresting somebody for a gun crime. I think it's really, the race is irrelevant. It is you got cause, effect, action, reaction. You got Joe Biden demanding more gun control, making sure that he's criminalizing gun possession, and then you have the police arresting somebody for gun possession. And for some reason, this whole idea of the gun possession thing is completely absent from all the media coverage. This is exactly what the left wants. They would love to see police going out and executing gun owners. There's just this particular gun owner happened to be the wrong skin color, so that was a big problem for them. But this is exactly what they've ordered. They've ordered more police interactions with people who are possessing firearms for whatever reason. And because it's hard to say. Normally, I would say, okay, well, he's in kind of a rough city. He's got a gun possession crime. I might have, even a couple of months ago, said, yeah, he's probably a gangbanger. But now I don't know. Because I am probably, by the end of the summer, going to be the owner of an illegal firearm. Not because I'm going to acquire one, but because one I already have will become illegal. Dyer probably will too. I'm sure some of you will. And so when I'm hearing that somebody's got a warrant out for possessing an illegal firearm, I am going to have, and this is probably something I'm going to need to force myself to do. It's a little bit of a habit. But I'm going to have to question whether or not that's a legitimate warrant for their arrest. That's a legitimate accusation that they're possessing an illegal firearm. Is it a firearm that's illegal because they stole it from somebody, or is it a firearm that's illegal because the grip was at 32 degrees and not 37 degrees?
It's probably because he's 20. It's a handgun.
Well, and again, why is that's a great one, actually, because there's probably a lot of people who, maybe they had a pistol that was their father's when they were 18, and then it became theirs when they were 21. A lot of people have, because you're allowed to have a rifle before then.
Yep.
The 21 age limit for a pistol is completely arbitrary. So that's another one. If that was the reason why, the gun was quote unquote illegal for him to possess was only because of his age. Now, again, I suspect that there were some other things at play there, but we don't know. This is essentially what the left would like to happen. If he was a white guy and it was the same charges, they would not. The only time the left would have talked about this would have just been to bolster Joe Biden's weekend of gun control by saying, look, we got more people fighting with the cops over their guns. That's all that they would have said.
I've had young men and women work under me who had been armed in the military with handguns, but they couldn't own them.
And they also couldn't smoke.
Yeah.
Or drink.
I can't figure that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, or drink. It doesn't make sense. Well, you don't have to drink for your job, but you literally have to have a handgun for the job. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and don't they allow the police, like, you go into the police academy at 18, like, you can have a handgun as a police officer, but it's illegal if you're not on the job. That's insane.
Right? Yeah. So what wasn't just him owning a gun. I'm guessing they knew right off the bat that he didn't have a permit because of his age, because you can't get a permit for a handgun unless you're 21. But what he actually was cited for was he was in public waving the gun around in a threatening manner, and then when someone called the police on him, he ran.
Yeah.
So
like I said, there's other things at play here, but the core issue is that it could have been, and it's just, I think it's funny.
I get your point.
Yeah, I think it's funny that the same weekend that there's gun control, unprecedented levels of gun control legislation and executive orders coming out of the Biden administration, that exact same weekend, you have the police accidentally execute somebody who had a gun that is now been declared an illegal gun. And I don't know why is the media not just overjoyed with this? That is exactly what they've been calling for. It's just the guy had the wrong skin color. Yeah, the guy had the wrong skin color.
Yeah, He didn't do nothing. So
yeah. So I mean, he's not the a great avatar for this problem, but you're right. It is as good as an example of how this could easily happen to someone else because we know the context behind him actually waving the gun around, but they could just accuse anyone with that very vague warrant. The way you heard me read it, right? It's a very vague warrant, but that anyone who now, like, okay, you now, let's say one of your guns you have is now illegal. You could have the same exact worded warrant for you.
Exactly. So that's why I'm saying you gotta question it.
Yeah. In any case, Wright and another man had both been charged with first-degree aggravated robbery in December of 2019 for imprisoning, choking, and attempting to rob a woman of $820, which, by the way, was her rent money. The case was still pending when Wright was pulled over Sunday for having the expired license plate tags. Police, of course, then attempted to arrest him. They did not know any of that. That's just some of his criminal history. It kind of gives a sign of what kind of person he was. So that's why I think he's a dirtbag, because I know I am probably in the minority here, but I tend to believe people who falsely imprison, assault, and choke and threaten a woman with a handgun to steal her rent money. I tend to think those people are assholes.
Well, and it also highlights another point in general with gun control is that it's going to most impact minority impoverished people. That tends to be the people that are victimized by criminals. It'd be poor people. And I wonder if she had a pistol. I wonder if she'd probably still have that $820 on her right now.
So the story was he actually failed to rob her of it because she kept saying the police are coming, and she actually had to call the police. Anyways, so you know that gun ownership used to be a civil rights issue, right? Because black people in the South were being victimized by the Democrats. Sorry, I mean KKK.
Oh,
and
yeah. Well, it's hilarious because Joe Biden.
Yourself.
Yeah, Joe Biden during his gun control stuff last weekend, he said, it was it's not really that big of a deal because we've always had certain groups of people that weren't allowed to own guns, which is funny because he didn't specify which certain groups of people and which times in history they weren't allowed to own guns. Because the only group I can think of that wasn't allowed to own guns historically was black people. And that was done by the Democrats in the South saying, well, this group of people, we can't let them have guns, obviously. Obviously, the Second Amendment doesn't apply to them because they're black. And so I think if Joe Biden had gone through the history of which groups of people throughout history had traditionally not been allowed to have firearms, I think that maybe his point wouldn't have had the weight that the media seems to think it had.
So none of Biden's policies regarding gun control would completely remove all types of guns. But what it does do is remove popular ones, makes them harder to get, limit supply, makes them more expensive, puts some of them behind additional tax stamp. It makes gun ownership more difficult, harder to get, more expensive.
Might say that it infringes upon your right to keep and bear arms.
Yes, and but what I'm saying is, though it's infringing, obviously, the people it's more affecting is those who are in the lower income brackets. It's going to far more de-arm, or at least make the arm these people who are armed illegal. It's going to mostly affect people who are on the lower income brackets. So that's going to be a lot more minorities, a lot more black people are going to be prevented from getting the means to defend themselves, which, I mean, is probably by design.
Well, and just by
the way, it looks like a White Lion is President White Lion.
Well,
the avatar, President White Lion.
Yes, of course it is. He should be. Let's see. Yeah, no. It really less so of an indicator of income. I think just location. There tends to be high concentrations of minorities in big cities, and big cities tends to be where you have the most restrictive gun control legislation, and that tends to be where the highest crime rates are. There's a lot of correlation and causation all wrapped up in there, but yeah, certainly this will lead to it. Well, it does. You see it in the cities. You have higher regulations, more infringement on guns, and you have higher rates of victimization of minorities. My little bumbly town, we don't have an epidemic of minorities being victimized any more so than any other racial group. It's about even. Probably because there's I live in an area that has a decent amount of ability to fight back. And so, yeah, certainly there's going to be crime wherever, but the concentration of the crime tends to be in the bigger cities. And I think that there is a correlation between that and the gun control.
It will definitely disproportionately affect black and brown or minority groups. Not all minority groups, but Asians probably be fine. Yep. Roof Koreans and all.
So, what is our next thing here, Dyer?
Okay, so we also, on a related note, obviously that shooting resulted in even more rioting. So we already had the Chauvin trial rioting. Now we also had rioting over Dante. What the hell was that?
It's the video that you posted, buddy. Just
so okay. Here's an example of some of the rioting, looting.
Yeah. And cars beeping, but you can just keep talking. I'll scrub through it a little bit.
Oh, it's a guy going into all the stores and just looking at all the damage.
Oh, man. Black Lives Matter.
Yeah. So these are stores that black people worked at. This is where they bought their things, their phones.
Silly black people. They should have just race grifted BLM organizations and bought $1 million houses in California.
So now a select group of criminals, some of them may or may not actually live in this community, they've just taken a bunch of wealth out of the community and made the lives of everyone in that area a little bit more shitty. How is that helping black lives?
It is not. Let's see here. So
I mean, they were just there to steal bread, you guys. I mean, it just had to be bread. Like they just were starving. So
yes.
Yeah.
As you know, Boost Mobile has a lot of bread in it.
Yeah.
Most people don't know that.
It's inside of the phones. It's
yes.
When you search bread on Google, it magically produces it.
Yes. It's a little known fact. But BLM's a lot smarter than you guys, so they know.
Can you pull up that second link?
I can pull up that second link, Dyer. That's what I'm here for.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You're a gentleman and a scholar.
I am one of those things.
So this guy here, we got to hear this one. Yes, play the audio, please.
4 nights. I'm just standing here today with soup for my family, and we're just, watching all of this unfold. It's very unfortunate.
You're not planning on using that, are you? Throwing it at the police?
Like I said, it's for my family.
Literally for your family.
Yeah. All right. 4 nights.
Yeah.
I feel like he was out there trolling, but that is funny. And this was a CNN probably. CNN probably just eating that up, saying yes, of course. That's pretty funny.
So I couldn't decide whether or not it's actually someone in BLM flaunting the fact that they are doing acts of violence, or if it's fake.
That definitely looks like satire. If he was there to actually throw that, he wouldn't be wasting his time talking to CNN. I think this is somebody trying to just pull one over on CNN, and CNN is just going to eat it all up because that's what they do. They just cannot help themselves.
Yeah. But the reason for the clip is I think it's hilarious.
Yes, definitely.
But back to a serious note, we got a study that came out recently.
It is a study that was written by Travis Campbell, and it shows that cities with BLM protests had more than 6,000 more homicides than expected. That's a lot of extra homicides. Like, you know, if you got, I don't know, if you have an extra 6,000 of anything, that's a lot of stuff. But if there's an extra 6,000 people that were murdered by other people than what was expected over the course of 2014 to 2019, that's a lot of excess death there. You're almost approaching COVID numbers at this point. So your doctor of sociology, Rayshawn Ray, a black man, noted about the story. What? The story noted that? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, he made a note about this story.
Oh, okay. So that despite the steep increase in homicides in riot permitting / supporting cities, the country as a whole, as a whole, Dyer, saw a reduction of homicides by 300. Do you wanna kind of refresh what you said there, Dyer? Because I don't think I understood what I just read.
Okay, homicides across the entire country are down 300, despite the fact that in those few cities that supported and encouraged BLM and Antifa rioting, even though they had 6,000 more, everyone else had so much fewer homicides in that same period that we actually had a reduction of 300.
So cities with BLM had plus 6,000 homicides over what they thought it was going to be. And cities that didn't have BLM in them had 6,300 less homicides than what they expected. Wow.
Exactly. That makes perfect sense, because the people who live outside of these cities with Black Lives Matter and Antifa, they're the ones who are buying all the guns. And so they're arming up to protect their own neighborhoods and cities against this stuff.
Well, I mean, if we have a net drop by 300, and we're just making cities that don't have BLM safer, I don't know. Maybe we just turn the magnet up a little bit more and we can get all the murders out of non-BLM cities.
Yeah. Separate the two sides out and let the bad places just kind of self-destruct.
Yep.
Build a wall around Chicago and New York and all of California.
I agree. Well, let's do it. We'll do the exclusion zone.
So how's this working out for Black lives? So most of these communities are predominantly black, and they're having 6,000 more homicides. They're really helping those Black lives out, aren't they?
I again, kind of juxtaposing these big cities with my city, which is a little bit smaller, kind of an industry town, which has survived the last several decades of destruction of industry. We just happen to have a lot of industries that were not on the chopping block, so I guess good for us. But I would imagine, just kind of juxtaposing that with the black people and minorities in big cities, the ones in my city, the biggest problem is which job do they want? Because we have so many more jobs, well-paying jobs, than there are people in our city. A lot of the companies are struggling to actually staff their factories right now. And because of that, they're having to raise the wages. Because when you have a bunch of extra jobs and not enough people to work them, guess what? It raises the wages.
Surprising.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. So
come on, Fox. Democrats don't work.
I know. So, but my city doesn't have BLM riots, so I don't know. I guess there's kind of a correlation there, perhaps, possibly even a causation.
They're called peaceful protests, by the way.
Oh yes. Well,
yeah.
Of course they are.
We don't want to, misgender them.
Yes.
Fiery, but mostly peaceful.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what a hyperbolic way of saying fiery but mostly peaceful is. But that is itself peak hyperbole. I don't know what I would say that's more irrational than that. But it's a thing that they unironically said. CNN unironically said, it is fiery but mostly peaceful. It is beyond parody.
I mean, the only thing to go up from there is nuclear explosive, but mostly peaceful. I mean, it doesn't. You can't get much worse than the city's on fire.
Yeah. So the next clip we have here is of a guy telling off a CNN journalist. about left-wing media coverage of the riots. I think that the guy still is like supportive of the riots, but I thought it was funny to show the clip.
Is there a particular area of the clip of this 6-minute video?
Nope, just the beginning part.
Okay.
Just the beginning part.
Warning, video contains disturbing images. My gosh, Dyer, what'd you...
You may notice that my eyes are very watery. That is because they have just
Poor baby.
like shot a huge amount of gas, and it's CS gas. It's really the strongest I have ever had stood in before during a protest. And we...
Now, Dyer, I imagine that you, as most people that have gone through basic, experienced being gassed.
Yes.
Do you remember being able to talk in the manner that she was after being gassed, and your eyes being able to open them?
Absolutely not.
Oh, okay.
So I was in a room that was white cloudy with the gas, and they told me to take my mask off and say a prepared statement, and I got like 4 words into the statement before I could not see, could not breathe, and my nose and eyes were just streaming.
Dyer's weak, but he's not a strong black woman like the CNN reporter is.
She is obviously a super soldier. I have to bow to her supremacy.
So I just want to like just kind of iterate, just CNN just playing the victim on this. Like, yeah, it's gas, but
maybe the mask is protecting her.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, she's more worried about COVID than she is about the gas, because like you can tell by which mask she chose to wear, right? Like which gas? Like what is she more worried about? Is she more worried about COVID, or is she more worried about the gas?
I have ever had stood in before during a protest, and we were all consumed by it. So was everyone standing near the precinct. Let me give you a look at the precinct. Sykes going to come with me and show you. You can see people walking, because anything that you see how hazy it is? That is all tear gas, and it is extremely...
It also looks like it just could be like, I don't know, fog. That's kind of what happens. Like, it looks like it's wet out. Like it probably rained. And it's kind of like
the actual fog.
Yeah, it might just actually be like a warm day followed by like an evening rain, and then just the steam coming off of the warmed roads. I don't know. That's happened in my city before too. I don't know.
Wait, are you saying that CNN is full of shit and they stage shots and lie about things? No, come on, Fox.
I'm no weatherologist, but I think she's full of bullshit.
Strong. If you look strong. Just now, I'm going to try to sort of stand in the street a little bit. You look there. Now you can see. Now you can see.
Y'all be twisting up the stories.
You want to talk to me? Do you want to talk to me? Okay, cool. Now, don't take my mic, but we're cool. Okay. What's your name?
What's my name? My name is my name.
All right. So tell me what you think about what's going on here.
What I think about this is all the press and all the extra shit y'all do makes this worse.
You think so?
Yes. When people want to protest, they shouldn't do it in front of a fucking police courthouse. Shit like that. You get what the fuck I'm saying?
I want you to be careful. I really do.
Of what?
Of anything that can hit you. Of anything that can hit you. Look at all the stuff of this.
Of what?
Of this.
Do it look like I'm scared?
No, you don't.
Do it look like I'm scared?
You don't.
Exactly. Y'all need to get up out of here with all that twisting up the media ass shit.
Okay.
Real shit.
You don't know me, but we're going to get to know each other. That's what we're going to
know each other.
Yes,
huh?
we are. We are.
How you going to know me?
We're going to talk. I'm going to share a number with you. All right, let's do it.
No, let's do it right here.
Let's do it. All right, here's my phone. Let's go ahead and share my number.
Talk about something that's real.
Tell me what's real.
Y'all just going to edit out the shit that y'all
We're live.
And then y'all going to edit out some other shit.
We're live.
We're not fucking live.
I'm live right now.
I don't care if you live or not. Okay. Get away from here with all that media shit that y'all doing.
Right now.
Maybe not the best.
He's literally calling them fake news to their faces. This is amazing.
Yeah, not the best representative, but certainly I'm feeling what he's saying.
I agree.
Like he's not wrong. He's just not elegant. He's also
not a taser. He's also not a taser. Yeah. So I mean, the sentiment is accurate. They are full of shit,
and they are making it worse. They are absolutely making it worse. They, I mean, we saw it all last summer. kind of, I don't even know what I call it. I guess it was like a spread, a cover spread for the Antifa riots in Portland, where they were doing kind of like a photo shoot of like how to look your best while you were rioting. And it was like a bunch of like Antifa people like in their riot gear, like trying to like these like cool poses or whatever. And the New York Times did this like big cover spread with them, and they're doing that kind of thing all over the place where it's really encouraging it. They're glorifying it. Yes, glorifying it, saying it's good. It's the best thing that they can do. Really encouraging it, saying, okay, you guys are the ones like fighting racism. Like, who doesn't want to fight racism? Unheard. Yeah, who doesn't want to fight racism? Who doesn't want to fight fascism? Just there's a lot of people who are pointed in the wrong direction on those things. But like, certainly Dyer and I, we fight fascism, we fight racism. We just also aren't idiots about what those things mean. But CNN has been one of the ones encouraging and rewriting the definitions of those words and pointing people in the wrong direction, and through that, encouraging the riots.
And they also are riling up these crowds by calling every single police interaction where a white police officer or any police officer does anything to a black person, just pulling them over, and just that's it. They're saying those are racist things, and then they're mobilizing these people to go out and destroy things. Well, they are directing it, and then when this happens, they encourage it.
Well, and it's through the actual fake news. So this guy, maybe doesn't have the best words at his disposal, but the riots that happened over this Dante thing, right? So those were spawned by fake news. The initial story for the whole week was that they executed this black guy on purpose because he had an air freshener. And none of that was true. And they ran with that all week, ginning up as much of this angst as they possibly could. And this guy is absolutely correct. These riots are caused by the media purposefully falsely reporting things.
Yep. Which brings us to the Derek Chauvin trial update. So we have an article linked to there, if you want to take a look at that real quick.
I do.
Okay. So one of the updates in the trial case, we already had a entire show about the Chauvin updates, but we have basically the judge threatened a possible mistrial of the case, and here's a video of that judge making a statement about it.
Late disclosure, even if it's prejudice the defense by the late disclosure, even if it's not due to bad faith, but the late disclosure has prejudiced the defense, it's not going to be allowed. So Dr. Tobin will not be allowed to testify as to those lab results. If there's anything he wished to add about carbon monoxide as far as environmental factors, but if he even hints that there are test results that the jury has not heard about, it's going to be a mistrial. Pure and simple.
Now,
so
he's kind of a cuck because they did exactly what he told them not to do, and then he just didn't do anything about it. So
we'll definitely get into that. So a former chief medical examiner called by the defense as an expert witness speculated in court that Floyd may have been exposed to carbon monoxide when he was pressed down on the ground under Chauvin's knee, and also he was near the rear end of the squad car. So they're trying to make plausible or a reasonable doubt of the prosecution's argument by saying that there's other ways he could have died that wasn't because of Chauvin.
The problem is just kind of interject a little bit, kind of some context. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Chauvin murdered Floyd, right? What they've done, because the whole thing. Oh, thank you for the ice cream, David Duff. Much appreciated. The initial narrative was that Floyd was murdered by Chauvin because Chauvin kneeled on his neck for 9 minutes. The defense did a wonderful job explaining with video showing clearly the knee was not in the same spot for all 9 minutes. It was in varying locations the whole time. And so the prosecution has pivoted to dozens of different theories as to different ways in which Chauvin might have murdered George Floyd, which, as I said earlier, their job is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt a single explanation for how you can only murder somebody one way, right? So there's multiple ways that Dyer might go about trying to murder me, but when he succeeds, only one of them is the cause. It can't be all of them. It's one way. You can only die of that one way. So, because if there's multiple things at play, well, then that creates kind of, doubt as to what was the actual cause. Typically, how the legal system handles it is that you die of one thing. That's how it handles it. There might be contributing factors, but all that does in a legal sense is obfuscate the reasonable doubt that maybe, well, if there's other things that were at play, well, then there's reasonable doubt that it was the single thing that the prosecution is trying to say it was. So the prosecution, because they're doing such a terrible job, they've created this whole web of possible ways that Chauvin might have murdered George Floyd. And the newest one, the most recent one that Dyer's trying to talk about, is that Chauvin murdered Floyd by holding his head near the exhaust pipe of the SUV, and that it was the carbon monoxide from that which killed George Floyd, being Chauvin's fault.
That wasn't a prosecution's point. That was the defense's point. So the defense's witness was trying to come up with other possible ways that he could have died that wasn't the prosecution's narrative, which, yes, the narrative has changed multiple times, but this particular one wasn't a prosecution's one. And they had the prosecution did know that this was going to be a line of argumentation that was going to be made by the defense, because the defense had given them a heads up when they were doing the discovery and getting evidence together that this was a possible line of argument of how it wasn't Chauvin. This was these other circumstances that led to Floyd dying. So the prosecutor had told the court that the state had just received, prior to that video you saw, the prosecutor told the judge and told the court that the prosecutor had received evidence of showing exactly how much carbon monoxide was in Floyd's blood, and that they had new evidence that they hadn't provided. Now, the defense had requested this evidence from the autopsy to be provided, and the hospital, the medical examiner, did not provide this information, and the defense had telegraphed, "We are going to make this argument. We want to see this evidence," and that evidence was not provided, and because it was not provided, it cannot be used in the court, and the prosecution is trying to now bring that evidence in with knowledge of what it says, and then use that as evidence without giving the defense the ability to actually know what's in it and then form a argument around that evidence, right?
Right.
And
it sounds like they're trying to say that this is new evidence, but because the defense had requested it early on, how could it be new evidence if this was something that they knew about ahead of time? Like that, it seems like they've blocked it ahead of time.
There was a subpoena to the medical examiner from the court saying, "Provide us all of your medical data." They provided the autopsy report, but did not provide this blood analysis, which they did have.
Yeah, I know that's what I was saying earlier. Is that I mean, you're not wrong that the defense wanted to make that the case, but the prosecution currently, what their goal was to say that this was the method with which Chauvin killed him.
Right.
So
yeah, they originally, like, the prosecution started out saying, well, he died. The technical cause of death was that his heart stopped, and obviously, we don't believe that Chauvin instigated a heart attack, but we believe that he did certain things while he was doing the arrest that caused him to put pressure on his neck that would cause him to be unable to breathe, and stopped blood flow, and all sorts of things. They've come up with all these different arguments to try to explain why his heart stopped. And one of them was this carbon monoxide thing that they're trying to push in now.
And actually, the evidence that is provided, they're saying, though it's not actually been viewed by, like, we can't review it ourselves, but they're saying that it shows that he didn't have any measurable, like any meaningful amount of carbon monoxide in his blood. So it has to be some other, it has to be Chauvin or what he was doing, because it wasn't that excuse. So they the judge told them that they could not use as evidence. They could not provide it to the jury because it would bias the jury. And that the evidence wouldn't be used. And if they did try to bring it up, that it would cause a mistrial. Also, for further context, the defense's witness that made that statement about the carbon monoxide being a possible reason for the death of Floyd, he already gave his full testimony and he has left the state. He's gone home. So their witness that could make further argumentation about the carbon monoxide levels is no longer available, and the prosecution only brings up its evidence after the defense's witness is gone, so he can't rebut it.
Yes. Okay. So where are we at on this one?
Here is a more full clip of the judge's argumentation for why it shouldn't be allowed. But yeah, so let's just play that clip real quick.
Okay.
Just to 2 minutes and 2 seconds.
First of all, in dealing with these lab test results, I find that Dr. Fowler's report gave sufficient notice to the state that the carbon monoxide that potentially was in George Floyd's blood could have affected cause of death. I read page 15 of his report, which I don't have at my fingertips at this point, that basically they said Dr. Fowler came right out and said it should be tested. That gave the state notice with sufficient time in February to either test the samples that are still there or to dig a little deeper. It's just by serendipity that Dr. Baker calls the state and says, oh, by the way, it does exist. It should be in there. It seems to me very odd. I'm not claiming any bad faith on the state's part, but it seems odd that Hennepin County Medical Center, when they're asked to turn over all their records, that they don't include records that maybe are just buried a little deeper. I think their response to the subpoena was probably insufficient in and of itself. And they should check their standard operating procedures so that in the event this happens again, that they will supply all the information they have. But in any case, the defense gave notice that this was going to be an issue and specifically talked about testing the sample. The state had sufficient time to investigate and disclose to, even if it's just because Dr. Baker called the state and said, we can actually find this, at 8 o'clock this morning, when the defense expert is done testifying, has left the state. It's untimely to give the notice, and it prejudiced the defense by the late disclosure, even if it's not due to bad faith. But the late disclosure has prejudiced the defense. It's not going to be allowed. So Dr. Tobin will not be allowed to testify as to those lab results.
So basically, then I guess the recap on it then is, the defense said carbon monoxide was at play, in killing Floyd, not Chauvin, and then the state had the chance to rebut that with the work. They did not do that ahead of time, and so they had no response. And then after the fact, after the defense had proposed that, and then their expert left, and the prosecution didn't rebut it at all, after the fact, then the prosecution wants to pull in this new evidence that has, again, not new evidence, but newfound evidence that has the actual lab.
Why would you do that?
So basically what's going on here? And then the defense doesn't have a chance to rebut it. I don't know. This is like just the stupidest goddamn thing I've ever heard. I don't. This is just like I don't know. This is like almost like irrelevant. It's so complicated. It's so dumb. I don't know. Thank you, Ater Lupus, for giving us $5. And you said something, but I didn't get a chance to read it. Much appreciated, though. Dyer can probably read it for us.
I'll pull it up. So next, paragraph's yours.
Yeah. But the other funny thing is this is Dr. Tubing guy, which is who we talked about last week, who he was the one who said, he testified under oath that Floyd did not have any breathing problems whatsoever. Absolutely none. No irregular breathing patterns up until he passed out. So I think that testimony should stand. I think it's morally correct. And I believe him because he's a doctor. We believe all doctors. If he was a woman, I mean, it'd be beyond belief.
So the comment on from Adder Lupus was, "D Alive app lied to me. Always cheers, guys."
Oh, well, much appreciated. Cheers to you.
Thanks.
Okay. So, okay, so I think probably the last bit of information is that Chauvin was offered the chance to testify. It was unclear up until this week if Chauvin would actually testify. I'd actually heard a lot of analysis that he was going to testify, and he ultimately decided not to testify, invoking his Fifth Amendment right to not testify, not to potentially self-incriminate. And the left, hilariously, the media picked up on that and said, well, you know, him invoking the Fifth kind of means he's guilty, right? Even though literally 2 weeks ago, the prosecution had one of their star witnesses. He invoked his Fifth Amendment, and his lawyer, the state's witness, the lawyer for the guy, so the reason that he was invoking the Fifth Amendment was because it would probably incriminate him in the murder of George Floyd. So that's pretty rough there. And the right was told by the left-wing media that, you know, the Fifth Amendment, you know, you shouldn't take that to imply guilt at all. But then the next week with Chauvin, they immediately was like, well, the Fifth Amendment, you declare that, I mean, you're pretty much guilty, right?
Yeah.
One thing I want definitely pushing that.
One thing I want to skip over is that the prosecution, after that, the judge told them that there would be a mistrial if they brought up that evidence they're not allowed to have, brought in a witness and specifically asked him about that evidence, and he brought it up, and then immediately they called the lawyers back to the with the judge, and the court did go on, that line of questioning ended, but they did bring to the jury the evidence that the judge said they could not bring, which gives Chauvin an ironclad excuse for appeal, or if not a mistrial.
Well, and you really can't, as a judge, you really can't be saying lines in the sand and then not doing it, right? Like he
definitely cucked.
Yeah, if he didn't want to, and you know what, maybe that's not a reason for a mistrial. But don't say it is and then not follow through with it. Maybe that's something that he needed to say behind closed doors.
The mistrials for less evidence-related issues, where the handling of the evidence wasn't done right, it wasn't filed the right time, someone signing a document incorrectly or filling it out wrong related to the evidence, like stupid stuff, has caused overturns and mistrials.
Now, a much more interesting thing that happened, I think, end of last week or early this week, is that one of the jurors was brought on the stand and was asked whether or not they had a book deal, and they had I think that they didn't answer no, and it was a little awkward for them there. So we already have the jury trying to make money off of this. I know that a lot of jurors from other high profile cases throughout history were able to convert that into fame, notoriety, and money after the fact. And we have some of the jurors already working on book deals, at least one of them.
It's fucking gross, man.
And you gotta wonder too, if you've got a book deal going on, well, part of what would make a book interesting as a juror is the result of the case. Now, if it's after the fact and you're writing a book about, like, well, here's what went on, that's one thing. But if it's during the trial, you're like, man, like, what do I need to say during jury deliberation that'd make an interesting, chapter for my book? What do I need to try and force the result to be to make an interesting chapter for my book? What do I need to try and trick my fellow jurors into saying or arguing during deliberation that would make an interesting chapter in my book? What can I do as the author to kind of, fight for, social justice and stuff like that, or whatever, because they're not going to give book deals to somebody who thinks thin blue line stuff. That's not the person who's getting a book deal, right? So I think by nature of them getting a book deal, I think we know which way they're leaning on it, and it's just a matter of whether or not their fellow jurors are going to go along with it. So you already have that going on there. which very, very interesting. I think that there should probably be some kind of legal action against that juror after this is over for attempting to
or disqualify them immediately and stick an alternate in. I mean, there's no reason to keep somebody who's been compromised. That's insane.
I think it might be too late to put a new person in at this point because they're having their closing arguments on Monday.
Yeah, but at the time when they found out about it, they probably could have swapped out the alternates, though, because they still have 2 alternates. And the alternates are there. Yeah. The alternates are there with them. They can just step in at any time.
Oh, then never mind. Then could have.
They just don't get a vote unless they're put in.
That's the whole point of the alternates. It's like they're there with the jury, like they're in the jury pool right now. They're watching the case, and just like I don't know if one of the other jurors has a book deal or gets hit by a bus, and like the alternates step in.
Hopefully, the same thing for both.
Yes.
Same guy for both. Has a book deal and then gets hit by a bus.
So, alrighty. Yes. All right, so intermission before our next story. Just because we're continuing our PSA tonight, we want to make sure that everybody is well aware of things that are tasers and things that are not tasers. So we have a taser on the left, and we also have Dyer's favorite plane on the right, and that is not a taser.
Now, I know they look very similar, and they feel very similar, but I promise you one is more deadly than the other, the taser.
One of them is better aerodynamics.
Still
also
the
taser.
One of them is cost effective.
We also have we also have flexed arm hangs, which Army girls do. As you'll notice too, this Army girl is standing on something while she's doing her flexed arm hang.
Not flexed arm hang.
Yeah, so that is things that are not tasers, flexed arm hangs. We also have Moabs. Moabs are not tasers.
Slightly more damaging, a lot bigger, but it's easy to confuse the two, I know.
Definitely
so it's important. That's not a taser.
And then also, a pile of foxes is not a taser.
It actually would have been better if that police officer had drawn one of these rather than the taser.
You drew a pile of foxes. I don't know.
Yes,
that might be
more confusing, that's for sure.
Yes. That would have definitely been a news story, and it would have been hilarious.
Yeah.
I think if we just start arming officers with piles of foxes.
He just threw a pile of foxes into the car.
Yes. I think that would have definitely subdued the culprit. But yes, so we also have nothingness. Nothingness is not a taser. There's that. So California ARs are not tasers. Because they're California ARs, which sucks. What's that?
They're not even guns.
Ugh. They were guns. They could be. They was guns. Let's see here. So just again, public service announcement. Just it's knowing the difference could save your life.
Yes.
Or the person that you're shooting a taser at. Definitely good to not confuse a pile of foxes for a taser. Okay, so what is our next?
I'd be okay with that actually. Not that picture though.
Oh, was there not a picture for the Florida riots?
Anti-riot law. No, there's not. Sorry.
Oh, well, you have one job. Why don't you pick us up here, Dyer? Take her away.
Okay, so one bit of good news is that the Florida Senate on Thursday passed Governor DeSantis's anti-riot bill, which includes increasing criminal penalties for assaulting law enforcement officers while engaging in a quote-unquote riot, including mandatory minimums of 6 months in jail without the ability to get bail. So all the people who might want to riot in Florida will be going to jail for a long time and not be able to get back out on the street. It also includes increased penalties for defacing monuments and other public property during riots. So any parks or federal buildings or statues will, if you deface those things, you will get the same 6 months in jail, no ability to get out. Also, it includes It penalizes local governments that interfere with law enforcement efforts to contain riots. So if the state is sending in police to respond to a riot, if the local municipalities are doing things to make that difficult, they will penalize those municipalities. They also set up a citizens appeal process when cities and counties try to reduce police budgets to respond in response to riots. So, if say your city says they want to defund police in your city, you would be able to appeal that. You and a bunch of people in the community can appeal it and prevent that from happening. Prevent that change to the budget.
Then there's my favorite, which should just be natural self-defense of I would like to see universal stand your ground. Come on, Republicans. But the Florida bill also grants civil and legal immunity to people who use their vehicle to escape from a mob trying to remove them from said vehicle.
It seems kind of obvious to me.
Yes. There is many states and cities that force you to retreat from your vehicle. Some of those states even force you to retreat from your home if your home is under assault. And some people have pointed out, well, where do you go if you leave your home and it's not safe in your home? It's probably not safe in the area surrounding your home. So where is it that you're supposed to retreat to? And when you're in your car, most of the time when you're in your car, you're not in your home. And there are some states that would consider your car to be your castle, for states that have castle doctrine. And if you're in your car, where do you retreat to? If the area around your car becomes unsafe, because there's people out there trying to get to you, why would leaving your car, like how is that better for you? That's just telling you to go basically surrender to the mob so that they can hurt you.
This mob is using lethal force to attack you and try to kill you. And I think that you have the moral right to be able to drive through them because they're the ones they're using force against you to defend yourself.
Things that are not tasers, your vehicle. But
yes. However, if you are trapped in the middle of a mob that's trying to pull you out of your vehicle,
just yell
smash
taser,
the vehicle
taser,
up.
Taser.
Just yell taser, and just hit the gas.
Yep.
They'll be shocked. Don't worry, they'll be shocked.
One of the states that has like all the castle doctrine stuff is Missouri, and one of the arguments they gave in their legislature was like, suppose that the threat that you're escaping from is something other than like violent mobs. Like imagine it's a tornado that's coming through and you're telling people like, how do you take shelter from a tornado? Well, you go into like a storm shelter or a basement or something. And they're like, okay, well, why would you tell somebody to flee their basement to escape the tornado? Like that's not what you're supposed to do. Your home, your domicile, your storm shelter, that's where you go to take shelter. So it's the same kind of situation. If you've got an angry mob coming after you, you're supposed to be able to have somewhere you can defend.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense to not have it like that. We have I think within the Second Amendment, the left and the Supreme Court over the years have read a lot of things out of the Constitution that are not explicitly written in there. And one of the things that I think that is in the Constitution that's not explicitly written in there is an inherent right to self-defense as outlined by the Second Amendment. I think that the Second Amendment implies a particular method of self-defense, and that self-defense might be from other fellow citizens, other non-citizens, or from your tyrannical government. But it prescribes a method. It in particular preserves a specific method of self-defense. But I think the self-defense at its core is what the Second Amendment was trying to go for. And if you're in your car and you're surrounded, and we saw last summer, there was two kinds of things that happened when cars got surrounded last summer. We saw both of them. One was people got removed from their vehicle and they got the crap beat out of them to death. Some of them to death.
Yeah.
And then we saw some other people who they yelled taser, taser, taser and slept on the gas, and they did not die. And so I think I would want to be the one guy who didn't die, and that is because I think that self-defense is a not just a constitutional right, it's a human right. And you got to remember the Constitution wasn't creating those rights; it was preserving rights that pre-existed the U.S. government. I think self-defense is something that's inherent of just being a living being, and so that is not something that the government can just say you can't do that. You can't defend yourself with the means at your disposal.
So, and there are analogical things like back when the Constitution was written, the founders, I don't know if it was a Supreme Court decision early on or it was a letter written to somebody, but they basically granted people the right to put cannons on their ships. Well, if you use ships as an analog to cars today, you should be able to have like car-mounted guns to defend your car from other people.
So in Chicago today, there was a seven-year-old girl who was fatally shot sitting in a drive-thru at a McDonald's. And so should that family during that drive-by have the right to run away from said drive-by? Should they not have the right to have a firearm to defend themselves, maybe fire back? I mean, Chicago's really a try-hard trying to get that the high score on their homicide rating.
Yep.
So the last thing, I think you read that one. The last thing for what this anti-riot law provides is it prevents people arrested for rioting or offenses committed during a riot from bailing out of jail during until their first court appearance.
Oh, that's a good one. So that means that Kamala Harris can't pay to bail out her supporters.
Yes, exactly. So that means they're at least off the street.
Now there has been some a little bit of pushback from both sides on this. Some people are worried that this will be used against the right. There's been discussion that a lot of these things are already illegal, so why do you need to make them illegal again? I think that those are all valid arguments. I guess we'll just have to see how this plays out.
It didn't make it more illegal. It made sure that people actually go to jail or at least are off the street, not bailed out the same exact day.
It does authorize. It authorizes state action against a broader category of things. So it allows them to reclassify gatherings as riots a little bit easier.
Yes.
I don't necessarily, I don't know. It's a confusing time, right? So normally if you ask me last year and even last year during around this time, I guess it'd be about a month from now last year, I did not want to see the National Guard out in the streets because it's just really bad optics. I like all these cities have police forces. These police forces should be able to handle it. I don't like the idea that we just, well, we're not going to set up the police. Let's just skip to the military. I think that's a terrible idea, and I still do. And similar to this, if this stuff's kind of already illegal, I don't like this idea that, well, just because we weren't prosecuting it, why don't we make it more illegal, and then that's going to encourage people to prosecute it. I guess that's an argument. One of the problems that you're going to have is because of what the left did, especially in the last year, but really over the last 10 years, is the extremism and the radicalism, the actual terror. The left is a terrorist sympathizing group. Antifa and BLM is their terrorist arm, is their terrorist militants. That is causing people to say, you know what? I really just don't got time for a nuanced argument on liberty right now. I'm just trying to make it to work and not have somebody pull me out of my car and murder me. And so you're going to have a lot of people that are like, you know what? I'm just not going to have this nuanced conversation about this bill. I'm just glad that they're doing something about it. And I don't think that's good for us long term, but it is a natural, it's a very predictable thing that's going to happen. That is and will continue to happen.
Not a rebuttal to what you just said, but going back to saying that this is making things that are already illegal more illegal, I disagree with that one thing, because one of the biggest changes is taking something that's illegal and just giving it a mandatory minimum punishment that didn't exist before. So previously, one of the ways, if they just didn't, other than just not prosecuting at all, was they would have people charged with extremely low-level offenses that would get them back on the street just as quickly. Yep. So now they're saying these low-level offenses that happen during a riot will have a minimum of 6 months, and you have to go to the first court appearance before you can be released. Yep. So that is not making the thing more illegal. It's making sure that these people are removed from the streets.
Well,
and have a minimum punishment for those things.
in my opinion, again, this gets to kind of a nuanced thing that I think is kind of outside the scope of this bill, but in my opinion, a lot of that is caused by this undercharging so that they can get back out in the street quickly and then just dropping their charges in general. It's caused by having these city prosecutors that are Soros funded, they're extremist leftists, and really they should be being removed and arrested. These prosecutors should be being removed and arrested under sedition charges. They should be charged with sedition, with attempting to subvert the state, and they're just not being that. So again,
I would rather a law that actually is about making what they are doing, not enforcing the law intentionally to support the undermining of the state. I would like a law clarifying that that's illegal and that has hefty minimums.
So I guess as a liberty-minded individual, I guess I don't know. I don't know what I'd rather see, but I think I just on a more visceral level, I think I would have rather seen the criminalization of prosecutors supporting state prosecutors that are supporting subversive acts. I'd rather see them being criminalized rather than kind of just shuffling, doing a shell game with legal definitions of what the civilians are doing. I think that there should be a higher burden on, if we have a state prosecutor, they got a job to do. If they are actively not doing that job to the detriment of the people that they're representing, that should be criminal. But we didn't get that. We got this Florida bill, so I guess we'll see how that goes. We do have this wonderful system in America where we have all these different states. There are all these little different labs of democracy. We've seen what some of the other labs have been doing, and it's not been working out very well. Florida seems to have been doing pretty well on some of their other categories, so I guess we'll see if this experiment in Florida seems to work, because definitely this summer they will get a chance to test out these new laws. I definitely think that they will.
So next thing we have on the docket here is Maxine Waters has provided us a brand spanking new clip of her calling for violence from the mob.
Oh, that's surprising. She almost never does that.
Let's adding to the collection.
Listen.
Racist system! Black Lives Matter! Black Lives Matter!
This is a very difficult time in the history of this country. Despite the fact that we know that people of color have been killed too often, unarmed young men, in particular black men, have been killed. We know that we're now coming to the end of the George Floyd trial, and that I suppose the closing arguments are going to be made on that case coming Monday. And we're really just almost at the beginning of what is happening with our young man, Dante Wright, who was killed, and that we have to persist in calling for justice. We have to let people know that we're not going to be satisfied unless we get justice in these cases. And so I just could not sleep. I could not rest. I could not be satisfied without coming here to let the family know, and the friends know, and the people of this community know, and all those who have organized for justice know that I stand with you, and I'm going to stand not only with you, but continue to fight in every way that I can for justice, for justice.
What's your opinion? No good cops in a racist system! Thank you for listening.
Hold on.
Is that it?
Our streets!
Nope.
Our streets! Our streets!
But just to say, I stand with you.
Thank you.
I am not afraid. I am not intimidated. And I'm going to speak truth to power.
Thank you.
That's the wrong clip. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I didn't really hear any. Okay.
They cut her out. They cut that section out.
Oh.
Basically, God damn it. I'll get the.
You can't rely on that stuff, Tyler. Like that is what they do. They will edit stuff in real time. You gotta be. You gotta check in on those before we post them up here. Okay.
Jeez Louise. So just to summarize what she said, but I will go get the actual clip. God damn it. Was she had told people to continue to escalate, to keep going in the streets and what's the word?
Get in their faces.
Yeah, there's along the lines, getting in their face and keep pushing harder. So I will get you the clip while you continue the next story. Sorry about that.
All right, let's see here. So we also have, double standard in police shootings. Again, it depends on what the skin color of the person is. Seems to be the pattern here. Because the U.S. Department of Justice confirmed on Wednesday that it has closed the investigation into the death of Ashley Babbitt, who was the Air Force veteran who was shot and killed at the Capitol riots while attempting to breach the door into the not do a hallway that was connecting to the Senate chamber, as being directed by an Antifa glow in the dark. But we went over that a while ago. But that the only actual death that happened during the riots that was attributable to the riot itself, not just people having random heart attacks, was Ashley Babbitt, and she was shot and killed by Capitol Police. They are not going to, the Justice Department is not going to investigate the issue any further. They're not going to pursue criminal charges against the Capitol Police officer who shot her. Personally, I don't actually disagree with this. We've talked about this before. I think that she certainly got caught up into a situation that she probably wasn't intending to do anybody harm. She was in a mob that was breaking down the door in the Capitol building, and the Capitol Police officers defended the building. I think in a way which we have called for federal officers to defend other federal locations throughout previous parts of last year. And so I think that the Capitol Police defending that area, I don't think that that's kind of outside of what I think I had been personally calling for throughout over the summer. So
my problem is that they offered to bring in more police and National Guard to protect the building, and the police, the Capitol Police said no. And then we have Capitol Police waving groups of people into the building. And then we have the police that are right there around this group. They are not, like, they're just as close to Babbitt as other protesters were. And what there wasn't, she didn't have a weapon. She wasn't posing a danger to anybody. Yeah, they shouldn't have been there, and I'm very much against them going in there. But the standard for which they say it's wrong for us to shoot a criminal who's actively trying to hurt a police officer or someone else, then they call that racist and wrong. With that standard is insane for them to be okay with this police officer of their own phrasing. They said that he got scared and pulled the trigger because he was scared, not because he saw an actual threat, not because he had a reason to feel like his life was in danger, but because he just got scared because her head popped over that window. Yeah. Like, that would not be an excuse they'd accept from anyone else.
Well, and the reasoning why they've dropped the case is because you got Joe Biden Justice Department now. All of his appointees are now taking over the Justice Department and taking over the cases, and they've decided that they were uninterested in going through this because they, in a way, they support having Trump supporters be executed by state action. Again, and that's problems. There's a couple of different narratives here. I'm trying to have kind of a nuanced conversation about, was what she was doing right or wrong? But realistically, the issue at hand is just that the left has control of the State Department now, and so they are going to be having a massive political slant. White Trump supporters being executed or dying by any means is just unimportant to them. They do not care. Somebody else, depending on what their skin color is, maybe that's of interest to the State Department. The Department of Justice. So
it also you with your nuanced thing, it also depends on what the mob is. Like if you go back a couple of years, you had like an angry mob of people trying to break into the Supreme Court building because Kavanaugh was getting nominated to be in the Supreme Court, and they were like trying to break down the doors and get inside the building. If somebody had been shot there, they would have had just a meltdown over
Absolutely.
that. But yeah.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, so that
massive double standard.
That clip or that I believe White Lion posted to you is the correct one. It's weird because I intentionally grabbed the longer one that had more context, and I swear that was in it. I'm really confused that it wasn't, but this is the shorter one that has just the comment in question.
Dyer is from the universe where he's correct. Did you post
Yes.
it somewhere?
It's in the chat.
Oh, you could have just posted it on the thing. The notes.
Oh, it's from Timberwolf. Thank you. Timberwolf sent it.
This one's still another minute 46. Let's see here. Okay, so yeah, Daily Caller's got the quote here, so I'm guessing this will actually have it.
And
Yeah.
so, yes,
Stay in the
I would
streets,
like
get
to see
confrontational,
the
is what she
bill in
says.
Congress pass on police reform, but I know that the right wing, the racists, are opposed to it, and I don't know what's going to happen to it. But I know this: we've got to stay in the street, and we've got to demand justice.
As a black man, despite all of the efforts, I feel like nothing changes. And George Floyd is waking so many people up, yet nothing has happened. Despite the rhetoric, like what needs to happen that's different this year than all the years before?
We're looking for a guilty verdict. We're looking for a guilty verdict, and we're looking to see if all of the talk that
Not looking for justice, looking for a guilty verdict.
took place and has been taking place after they saw what happened to George Floyd. If nothing does not happen, then we know that we've got to not only stay in the street, but we've got to fight for justice. But I am very hopeful, and I hope that we're going to get a verdict that will say guilty, guilty, guilty. And if we don't, we cannot go away.
And not just manslaughter, right? I mean,
Oh no, not manslaughter. No. This is guilty for murder. I don't know whether it's in the first degree, but as far as I'm concerned, it's first degree murder.
Congresswoman, what happens if we do not get what you just told? What should the people do? What should protesters on the street do?
I didn't hear you.
What happens?
what should protesters do?
Well, we got to stay on the street, and we've got to get more active. We've got to get more confrontational. We've got to make sure.
More? Is
I
burning
don't
stuff down and looting and burning people not enough?
Yeah, I don't know how you get more confrontational than $4 billion of damage last summer. I'd say it's pretty confrontational, but I guess she needs $8 billion of... If there's not damage, I guess, we can't really spend money from Biden's infrastructure bill. If we're not burning down the infrastructure, we can't build more infrastructure. You have to burn the infrastructure if you love it, because then you can set it free and build more.
It's like a phoenix. It comes back from the ashes.
No.
Yes. Yes. There you go. Okay, that's definitely the juicy clip there. Then, but yeah, get more confrontational. Again, that's just a complete gaslighting of what's actually been going on. Which actually, sorry guys, you just couldn't see that. It's complete gaslighting of what's going on, because in her opinion, right, like there was no confrontation all summer, right? There was no riots, it was all peaceful protests. And she's saying, well, we tried peaceful protests last summer, and in her mind, in her warped reality, they tried peaceful protests and that didn't work. So you got to get more confrontational, right, guys?
Maybe she wants more like to move on to other terrorist things, a little more drastic things like bombings or something. Maybe burning entire city blocks down isn't enough for her.
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
And almost 40 murders of directly attributed to Black Lives Matter.
And a lot more homicides in the cities where they are at. I'm sure there's a connection.
Yep. Alrighty, so ready to go on to the next story here?
Yes.
Okay. So, we have another story of just media lying. All right, so CNN blatantly lied, which I think was CBS actually was the initial propagator of this.
A lot of them did.
Well, so what I think was happened was CBS was the initial purveyor of this fake news, and then all the other mainstream outlets picked it up. But let's read at it. So CNN, like many mainstream sources, ran a story with this image of a 13-year-old boy who was shot by a police officer. Let's see here. With his hands raised. All these outlets had access to the full video, and others still that drastically changed the context of the shoot. Other images and other video that changed what the context of this image was. But they chose only to show the image that we're showing you on the screen right now.
Now, I have a feeling from knowing what happens in this video that he maybe should have just not done it. Just don't do it. And then you won't get shot. Here's another image that gives you a lot more context.
Oh, no. Is that a gun?
Look, that is a gun.
It's not a taser. It's definitely not a taser.
So this happened in a fraction of a second where that movement is him turning his body, throwing the gun, and raising his hands up at the same exact moment. The police officer seeing him turning with a gun in his hand cannot tell whether he is turning to point the gun or turning to throw it. All he knows is he has a gun and he's turning towards the officer. All right? So the officer took a split second to fire at that moment, shooting the 13-year-old in a completely reasonable shooting, and this context was completely removed from most of the initial news coverage.
Yeah, I don't suppose you have the video because these. I mean,
yeah,
I know what you're talking about because like these the timestamps.
No, I have a lot of great video. It's highlighted red.
Yeah, because the two shots that we've got on screen, the timestamps don't line up. That these are seconds away from each other. They're several minutes apart. But we will watch this video, which has all of the extra goodies in it for you guys to see.
Yeah, this one's actually time synced with all the different angles because, as you can see, this is not the same exact angle. So yeah. So what else we got here? So all right, cover that. So, the body camera footage. Are you playing the video right now? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. I don't know if you want me to play it or not.
Yeah, let's play it.
Okay. I guess it's not narrated, but
that's the 13-year-old and the adult that was with him as they were shooting cars.
They were shooting at cars?
You'll see. This is the full story. So you see them walking up. You see them on the sidewalk there, right there with the arrow. You see that car. You're gonna see them shoot. You're gonna hear them shoot at the cars. In a moment, not yet.
Oh my god.
Jesus. This is like Meg dumped. Good God.
That's them running from the shooting they just did. This is the police officer getting out, and here's the body camera footage.
That's like a gang initiation kind of stuff.
Please stop! Stop right now! Hey, show me your fucking head! Stop it! Stop it!
See?
Yep. Okay. So there we go.
Okay. So I want to point out that this guy, this 13-year-old, again, here's from a different angle. He has gun residue from firing at cars moments ago. The gun that was recovered, that was visibly in his hand, thrown by him, shown by multiple angles, the shell casings from the bullets that are fired at an innocent civilian driving by, they match up to his gun. This guy is a young gangbanger who was trying to murder people by shooting at cars. He then turned towards an officer and got shot after running from the officer with a gun. I give zero fucks. I cry me a fucking river. A gangbanger got shot after trying to kill someone. I don't care. I don't have the emotional energy to care about his life anymore when we have BLM and Antifa going out and attacking innocent people, and that's a far bigger issue. When a gangbanger dies after trying to murder someone, I'm saying I don't care. Now, so they try to make this guy the victim, this attempted murderer. They want that to be the victim. Yeah, sure, he's 13-year-old. That's a real tragedy. You know what the tragedy is? That the parents and adults in this kid's life made a monster.
You know, he's 13, so that makes him
dead.
An 8 years older than what he needs to be to decide to be a girl. He's fully capable of making that decision on his own 8 years ago. But he's in the left's eyes, he's just this innocent person who's not capable of knowing right from wrong at 13 when he's shooting up cars. So, you know.
Well, and you'd think that if they were really concerned about this kind of stuff, that they would have some sort of a plan in place to go out and just wipe these gangs out and make sure that they're just gone from existence. Because there's no reason a 13-year-old would go out and shoot at random people like that, except for these gang initiation rituals that happen all the time. I mean, this stuff is a bigger problem than anybody cares to give it credit for. And if you really want to stop this from ever happening again, you don't defund the police, you don't ban guns, you go out and you try to wipe out the gangs.
Well, yeah, I think it's important to remember that all these gangbangers, especially MS-13, they all have a spark of divinity in them.
Oh, yeah.
They're also not tasers, by the way.
Yes.
No, they're not tasers.
Pew, 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 taser. That one would like make someone think twice, right? Yeah, I mean, what's crazy too is in this shot, like this gun, I don't know that it like. I think it's probably still in the process of falling, or maybe it's like leaning up against the fence. I don't know, but less than a second between, like, that's approaching your reaction time, right? So like that's approaching the reaction time of being able to draw your weapon, get a beat on somebody, and pull the trigger. And you got this kid who just dumped what I mean I think probably here almost 10 shots come out, and then you got the police tracing him down. He turns around, he's got the gun in his hands. And you wonder if he even just dropped it by accident or what his plans were there.
Yeah. So he might actually have that slide back and have an empty mag, and is unable to fire the police officer. And that's why he didn't.
Yeah, I mean, if it was a 10-round mag, he might have dumped it all.
Well, it kind of looks like the slide's back. It's kind of hard to tell when that washed out.
It definitely is. You can see. Yeah, you can see there's silver from the barrel on there. Unless it's heavily modified, it's definitely the slide locked back.
Yeah, so that's the way I interpreted the video. So what they didn't show also is the vast majority, like 2/3 of the video from the body cam, is that officer trying to save his life afterwards.
Oh, well, that's not important.
Yeah, so they didn't include that either. So this guy, the police officer, the news wants to organize and encourage hate and harassment and death threats against him, accusing him of being a killer of a 13-year-old, right? For unarmed with his hands up, don't shoot 13-year-old. And they're trying to ruin this guy's life for doing something to protect the community. What about the lives of the people in those cars?
Yeah, where is that person at, right? I don't know. I guess it's not really on them, but I would like to see at least some people where they come out and they say, "Hey, no, I want to have the news on me. Like, I want this cop to have chased down this person. He shot into my vehicle. I wonder are those people okay? Did the media look to see
if they came out, they would get attacked just as viciously. Yeah. They would be called racist, and they would be, the media would criticize them.
Is this a race issue? I think this kid's a white kid, isn't he?
It doesn't matter. It's the news media.
I know. The narratives are all like just incomprehensible anymore. Like I don't even know. Like I don't know what they're even saying anymore. Like the Chauvin thing. Like some parts of the trials, like I don't understand what they're arguing. I can't like argue against it because it's like what they're saying doesn't have any kind of cohesion to it, and like there's nothing for me to like argue against because they're not saying anything. Like the narrative on this one is just like, I guess the left and the media is like supportive of like white gangsters now too. I just like I know it's like incomprehensible to me. Like I don't know what angle they're trying to go for here. They're just trying to demonize the cops, and like that's the only goal.
I think they wanted to destroy our society because they think that it's built on a capitalist system that's inherently racist, and they just wanted to destroy us.
Yeah, I don't suppose you got in here the story of CNN crew getting chased out of the riots this weekend, did you?
No, I mean I have a heck of a lot of small stories, but not that one.
Oh, well. That one was fun. You actually had CNN was getting chased, and they had stuff being thrown at them. And the crew that was getting chased out of a riot and having stuff thrown at them, they still reported on it as being like a misunderstood protest. And it was like, wow, you guys are really You guys are really committed to the company line there. CNN would give no fucks if you guys just got killed in the streets. They would just disown you and say that wasn't our news crew, but you're still willing to toe the company line even though you barely escaped with your lives. They even actually they kind of committed a small moving violation too, because when they were escaping, they were using their car to escape, which is like,
oh no,
I know, right? And they they backed into somebody else's car when they did it. Oops.
Oh no.
Yeah. Definitely should throw the
dog.
So
they're going to be arrested protesters, soon, right?
I should hope so, but I don't know.
Damn.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the next story is Project Veritas leaks. It's related to CNN.
Yep. Alrighty. So, Project Veritas founder, James O'Keefe, who I used to work for briefly, he has been using Tinder to catfish CNN employees, which is funny. And it's also even funnier imagining like O'Keefe, like, okay, I need a whole bunch of hot girls just all day on Tinder. You just swipe until you find somebody on this hit board of, you got all these faces of these CNN execs. You just swipe until you find one of these faces, and then you tell them anything they want to hear. And so he's been doing this for a while, and it worked. They got one, which is amazing and hilarious, and I love it. And basically, I believe that the particular executive that they got went on up to 5 dates with this Project Veritas catfish, which is funny. And she took him out to dinner, got him talking, and man, did he talk! He talked a lot. And it was very interesting to hear what he was talking about. Some of the key highlights, of which there's more and more coming out. There was the first day was some interesting bits, and as what O'Keefe likes to do, he'll drop out a little bit, and the next day he'll drop out a little bit more, and then he'll kind of sit back, wait for the media to respond or not respond or whatever, and then they'll usually back themselves into a corner by trying to deny it, and then O'Keefe drops another big bombshell, and it just destroys their narrative, and then nothing happens. That's usually the James O'Keefe cycle of releasing a story. But what they found out about CNN was that self-admittedly they are intentionally publishing propaganda, and that they intentionally published propaganda throughout the last couple of years with the intention of getting Trump out of office, even to the point of knowingly lying about stuff or having stories that they thought were important stories, but they couldn't report on them because it didn't fit with the narrative and the goal of getting Trump out of office. They were bragging about how big of a deal for ratings that COVID-19 was, how exciting it was to put up on the side of the screen the kill counter for how many people had
gangbusters.
died. Yeah, how many people had died of COVID. Yeah, he said that. He said gangbusters for ratings because it just drove up the fear. And there was a lot of people on right-wing media saying, hey, they're putting up this thing, the kill counter on the side of the thing. Why do you think they're doing that? And a lot of people were like, oh, that's just like, Alex Jones conspiracy stuff. And then you've got CNN from their own mouths saying, yes, the entire point of putting up the kill counter was just to scare people. You got to put $1 in the Alex Jones was right jar. Let's see here. Then Twitter, after this, following this, Twitter suspended James O'Keefe's account for allegedly making fake Twitter accounts because, as we all know, Twitter is a hawk. Of all the birds that Twitter is, they are hawks when it comes to bot accounts. Because, as everybody knows, there are no bot accounts on Twitter except for that one that James O'Keefe was running.
How dare they?
Yes, how dare he? He has defiled Twitter. Twitter was perfect except for that one bot account. The only bot account on the entire platform was just James O'Keefe. Here, this is a factual claim, though. So Twitter made a claim of fact that James O'Keefe was operating puppet accounts. And James O'Keefe said, no, I'm not operating puppet accounts, and you just made a claim of fact, and you are misleading and slandering me, and so I'm going to sue you. And so James O'Keefe is now involved in a defamation lawsuit with Twitter, to which we wish him Godspeed and good luck.
Good luck.
May he take them for more than the Covington kids did.
Yeah.
Yes, hopefully. Yeah, every lawsuit against CNN that just knocks them down a peg is good for everyone else because that's money they can't use to try to destroy people like you and I. Because that's what they do with the money. They take their money and influence and just destroy political rivals and people that don't fall in line, refuse to bend the knee. So, yeah, good on James O'Keefe.
Yeah, and then I believe that there was also some issues that people were trying to say that he was releasing private information about people. I think it was the Daily Caller. I could be mistaken, but I know one of the media outlets that was reporting, oh, James O'Keefe was releasing private information. They actually, in their article, released identifiable address information that led to like James's offices and house. And it was like, no, you guys are doing what you're reporting that he did, but he didn't actually do it. But you guys literally just did it while you're reporting that he was doing it. So
Hilarious.
That was fun. Okay, so
next story.
I still love that they got catfished. That's the greatest part of all this because it's like that's a problem with the left. Like that's how Swalwell gave all of our secrets to China.
Yeah. So again,
you got honeypotted.
Continue our PSA. Again, it's important that everybody knows what a taser is and what a taser is not. So on the left, we got a taser. We got things that are not tasers, which is picture of Dyer in his fursuit. Dyer's not a taser. He might be infrastructure, but he's certainly not a taser. Though it is shocking to see him all dressed up like that. You also have things that are not tasers is Dyer's former girlfriends. Nice of them
absolutely not.
Nice of them to all get in a line like that.
I don't. That's not my type. It's like 4 times my type.
Those are food for his dogs.
Yeah.
4X. Things that are not tasers. AIDS monkeys. Let's see here. I think that was our things that weren't tasers. Brought to you by Direwolf Media.
A comprehensive list.
A comprehensive list of all the things that are not tasers. Why do you guys watch us? All right. I think our last story. Is this our last story?
I think we're making our last story.
It's going to be our last story. Biden has passed off Trump policies as his own. So he's gonna make Trump policies great again by rebranding them as Biden policies. Realistically, it's just his handlers doing that. So Biden has flip-flopped on the wall. He was encouraged to flip-flop on the wall by the left even. I think you had the New York Times running an article talking about how Biden needed to build the wall. Otherwise, the next Trump was going to do it for him. And that didn't really make sense to me until I thought about it a little bit more. And really what that article is saying is that if Biden doesn't build the wall and they keep flooding the nation with immigrants, that's just going to further encourage the right to elect somebody like a Trump again who can run on border policy as Trump did. So, they got to do it first. Let's see here. So left-wing media has leapt to the defense of Biden, saying that, he's not really building the wall. He's just fixing up areas where fences already exist. It's not a new border wall. It's bollard fencing. And yes, he is taking down old, insufficient barriers and replacing them with effective bollard fencing, just like Trump was doing. However, Biden is, in fact, building new border barriers as well, which might actually be more than what Trump was doing.
Yes. So, they were criticizing Trump for replacing ineffective wall fencing, and that's not what Biden's doing. They criticized Trump for building new fencing, which is what Biden is now doing. And in one example of how he's doing this, something he's actually doing more than Trump was, is the Biden administration has now seized 6 acres of private property from a single landowner on the border of Texas to build more wall. The owner said that the owner said he had voted for Biden in hopes that it would mean that the government wouldn't take his land for the wall.
No.
Well, if it's gonna be somebody, I'm glad that it was somebody who deserved it.
Right.
Welcome to the
it's a
Republican
Biden
Party,
voter.
buddy.
So I there's some story behind this. So this family has fought the Bushes, the Obama administrations, and has preserved his property from border fencing being built. When under the Trump administration, he kept the government stuck in legal battles for the entire 4 years to delay the building of the wall. And then when Biden gets into office, he just immediately takes over the land.
Wow.
Oof.
Wow.
I hope you aren't regretting that vote.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was afraid of Trump using eminent domain to do all this, and he promised he wouldn't, and then Biden comes in and just like, yeah, it's mine now.
Yep.
It's our land. This land is our land.
Royal we.
Yes.
Okay, so
we also had the Republicans, instead of doing something productive, spent their time in Paint, MS Paint. Probably the one from Windows 98, not like the new one from Windows XP.
I hated this. I saw this and thought it was so stupid.
Yeah, that's Steve Scalise. Survived an attempted execution by Bernie's hitman. And he's gone on to do great things, such as create a milk carton with a picture of Kamala Harris, probably in MS Paint. And he's labeled it missing to show how she was assigned to tackle the border crisis, and she has not visited the border in over a month. Steve,
DeSantis
you can do better. You can do better.
DeSantis is passing bills. Texas is passing bills and laws that are actually doing things to preserve our rights and punish those who are trying to take them away. But he made a
milk carton.
Milk carton. Good job.
I would have thought that somebody who literally took a bullet from a political rival, I would think that he would have a little bit more of a serious beat to him. But I think that if anybody highlights the unseriousness of the Republican Party, it's got to be this. I mean, that's really disappointing to see that. Like, I just can't believe that's really wild that somebody who was like paralyzed, shot, went through this really epic recovery story. And then, I mean, he was shot for political reasons. There's very few politicians in modern America who were shot for political reasons. You can count them on about one hand for like the last 20 years. And he was like one of three. I can't believe that he thinks that the response to that is something that's this unserious. I can't help but think of something that Ted Cruz did this week, which I think you guys know how much I love Ted Cruz. Not nearly as much as Ted Cruz loves not doing his job.
Cruz.
But Ted Cruz had this epic moment, and the Daily Wire, who pays Ted Cruz to do a show for them, they were very excited that Ted Cruz did this thing. And Steven Crowder was very excited for Ted Cruz. And other commentators were very excited for Ted Cruz because, Ted Cruz goes on to their shows. And, Steven has, Ted Cruz come on the show a lot. And everybody who, the book deals and all this stuff, everybody's very, who has Ted Cruz as a part of their actual money-making apparatus. They're also excited to see Ted Cruz this week. And what Ted Cruz did this week was he was in a hearing for a new Biden appointee, and this person, I forget which position she was running for, maybe Dyer remembers or Lyon remembers, but basically the gist of it is she had written an article last year talking about how great defund the police movement was, and gave a bunch of the article was essentially titled "Reasons to Defund the Police," and she had all these arguments in the article, as an op-ed that she wrote herself about reasons why the police needed to be defunded. And so Ted Cruz asked her, are you still defunding the police? And she said, are you still interested in defunding the police? And she said, no, that's not anything that she supports. He said, well, did you? And she said, no, I didn't. I was just writing that as an op-ed. You can just kind of write your opinion. It doesn't really matter if it's an opinion that you hold or not. It's not a factual statement. And Ted Cruz was like, I'm reminding you that you're under oath right now. And, we have this article right here that says, it's written by you. It's your words that are you disavowing this article? Are you saying that you lied in the article? And she's very obviously perjuring herself. because she's under oath and she's lying about statements that are literally written right there that she wrote with her own hand. And Ted Cruz is like, oh, like, you're perjuring yourself. And everybody's like, oh, like, Ted Cruz slayed her. He's calling her out for perjuring herself.
Prosecute her.
After the hearing, was there any results from that? No. Did Ted Cruz prosecute her? Nope. Did he bring her up on charges? Nope. Did he, say that she needs to be brought up for whatever the punishment for perjuring is? No. None of that stuff happened. So, again, you've got just this laziness, this showboatiness. You got Ted Cruz. At least Ted Cruz is like, he's on all the popular places and he looks like he's doing a lot more. He's a lot better at pretending that he's doing something. Scalise needs to take some lessons because making this milk carton is not a very convincing way of pretending that you're doing something. Ted Cruz is really, really good at pretending that he does stuff.
It's hard to convince you're using your time efficiently when you do things like this.
Yeah, but they're both equally. So, like, Steve's this milk carton thing is obviously stupid and a waste of time, right? Ted Cruz, I think that what he did was equally a waste of time because it had no substance to it, but it didn't look as tacky as this milk carton is. So they're both equally ineffective. When you were looking at what Ted Cruz is doing, you'd be like, oh man, like Ted Cruz slays. Did he actually accomplish anything, or did he just make a milk carton? The equivalent of making a milk carton that's got Kamala's face on it.
Well, and the sad thing about all of this is that they're taking like the playbook of the 1990s Republicans, but they've removed all the teeth. So like nobody has ever seen a milk carton in the last 10 or 15 years with a face on the side of it because we've got the internet.
So like you have to go back to
alert. You have to go back to the 90s to even remember milk cartons with faces on them because nobody born in the last 20 years has seen one. So they're kind of like stuck in the 90s with their messaging. But in the 90s, they impeached Clinton for perjury, for lying under oath. But so, they're not even willing to go after people like that anymore. Yeah. They've got all the corny, pathetic messaging of the 90s, but none of the teeth that they had back then.
Well, yeah, it's not about actually accomplishing anything. Ted Cruz is trying to sell books. He's trying to get paid by the Daily Wire so that he can have his own podcast. I don't know what Steve Scalise is. He's not very good at monetizing. Like I said, Steve Scalise is just really bad at pretending like he's doing something. At least Ted Cruz figured out a way to monetize it. But they're both equally not doing anything for us. They're both not doing anything for us. And I look at Ted Cruz now, and I remember all the people 5 years ago telling me like, man, Trump is just an insane person. Like, you got to go with Cruz. Like, he's the one who's like, he's straight and narrow. He's like a real, he's got these real ideas. And Trump's just this crazy person. He doesn't really mean it all. And I look at what Ted Cruz is doing, and whether or not people were right about Trump or all, I mean, there's some traction with some of the things people said about him back then, but you look at Ted Cruz and it's like, man, like Ted Cruz wasn't a good option either. And we're right back to where we started with, man, the Republicans are just not putting up anybody good. They do not have, there's just so many of them that do not have any of our interests. They're not advancing the ball at all. I just don't know. I don't know what the solution to that is, but I think Ted Cruz is one of the most dangerous Republicans right now because he is one of the most popular Republicans right now. And he's the one that does the least. And that is dangerous. There is a quote from Andrew Breitbart, which they play on Breitbart Daily News every day. And I hear it all the time, and I can't remember it exactly. But basically, it goes along the lines of, it's the people that are telling you what you want to hear that are the real threat. It's not the left. It's not the people who are going against you that are the real threat. The real threat is the people that are saying that they're fighting on your behalf, and they're just telling you what you want to hear. And the reason why they're more dangerous is because they are the ones that are taking up the positions that you could actually do something in, and then they're not using that power to do something in. Dyer and I do political commentary. We do not have the ability to bring charges against somebody who perjures themselves to the Senate. We don't have the ability to bring a bill to the floor. We don't have the ability to add a 5,000-page amendment to a bill to gum up the works. Ted Cruz has that ability, but he wants to be a commentator.
And they not only have the ability, they have like hundreds of staffers to do this stuff for them. Like they're all lawyers. They all know that you can prosecute somebody for this, but they don't do it.
Yes. Ted Cruz and not really any of the Senate Republicans, but Ted Cruz seems the one who's getting the most media coverage all the time. He's always on. If he's not on the Daily Wire, if he's not on Crowder, if he's not on Hannity, if he's not on Tucker, he's on one of the other ones. Every night that he's not on one of them, he's on the other one. And realistically, every single moment that he's on one of those shows, he could be on the Senate floor reading thousands and thousands of pages of amendment, doing a pseudo filibuster as we had described a couple of weeks ago. I don't care if there's not crazy legislation going through at this very second. Ted Cruz could be just bringing the entire Senate to a halt. That would be brave. That would be actually doing something. And there's a lot of other Tom Cotton. I think he's getting close. He's in a similar way where he's real good and snappy at those hearings, but he doesn't follow it up. He's not following it up with actual action on the floor, doing maneuvers and procedures to gum up the works. He's not prosecuting people who are clearly perjuring themselves in the hearings. And these people are very popular. They're telling you what you want to hear. They're saying they're fighting on your behalf, but they're really not. And in the meantime, the left is just racing. All of their people are fighting on their behalf. They are just racing and sprinting as far left as they possibly can. And we got a bunch of, quote unquote, generals, people, our elected representatives on our side that say they're doing stuff, but they're really not. And they're just, the left just keeps moving the ball down the field. And the right is just sitting there doing all the pom-poms and cheerleader stuff. They're like, we're going to run the ball. We're going to run the ball. But they're just sitting there not doing anything. They're just sitting there talking, waving the pom-poms, not doing anything.
Yeah, and there have been cases where I just remembering back in the last 10 years, like Dinesh D'Souza being prosecuted because he, not even for something like perjury, but because he gave too much of his own money to a political campaign. And they sentenced him to, psychological counseling and threw him in lockup for however long, 8 months or something. And this was because he donated to a political campaign, something that nobody was ever thrown in jail for. Like that was a minor offense, but because he was a messaging thread, I guess, to them. Yeah. So like the other side does not act like this. They prosecute people for the minorest of things, but if you go on our side, on the side of people who, like you've said, they're just not doing anything. They're not taking even serious crimes seriously. They're not prosecuting people for doing horrible things.
We just talked about the juror in the Chauvin trial who was found out that they've got a book deal already. And I think it was very obvious to everybody. Right. Man, that's really inappropriate to be having a book deal while you are in the midst of this case. A senator is, in a lot of ways, especially in a hearing, a senator is acting as a juror. They're acting as a mechanism in what's going on. If after the fact, after they've retired and gotten out of their government life, they want to do book deals, great. That's perfectly fine. Ted Cruz, he's got a big book coming out right now. He's doing the exact same thing. I think it is as disgusting as what that juror is doing. And you got again, I just pick on Ted Cruz because he is the one who does the most media appearances on the Republican Party right now. And so I think he is the one that is worthy of the most criticism, but he's by far not the only one. But I think he's just the same thing as that juror. He's got a book deal right now. He's got my screen just went out. He's got a book deal right now. He's got a podcast with Daily Wire. He's doing all these media appearances all the time. And it's inappropriate because instead of working on what he's supposed to be doing, instead of doing some kind of maneuver that would actually get us some traction in the Senate, he's thinking, man, what can I do that would make a really good chapter for my book? What can I do that would make a really good 5-minute segment on Hannity tonight? What could I do that would make Crowder want to pull me in on a show for a 30-minute guest segment? What can I do that would get us some content for Daily Wire? And he's doing that instead of actually doing something that would advance the ball.
Right. It's political theater to their own benefit. It has nothing to do. I mean, you can say that they're out there getting the message out, but they're kind of preaching to the choir. They're not really going out to, like, Ted Cruz doesn't go on CNN every night. Like that would be him trying to at least get the message out. That would be the bare minimum you'd expect from a congressman to just, explain why you do the things that you do and why you believe what you believe to your opponents. But he doesn't even do that. He's just like preaching to the choir to kind of like, I don't know, siphon money from his supporters, which is really, it's really bizarre. Like telling people what they want to hear almost.
Well, and again, it's not that we don't have room for right-wing commentary. That's what Dyer and I do. That's what a lot of other our favorite commentators do. But we have plenty of commentators. We don't need Ted Cruz to be another commentator. We need him to be a senator, because Dyer and I can't do stuff that senators can do. Ted Cruz can, but he would much rather be a commentator like Dyer and I rather than being a senator. But he's the one who's in the Senate position. He's got a job to do. He would rather do a different job. And I just don't know. I don't know what the solution to that is, but we are careening off the hill pretty fast. And the people that are supposed to be the brakes would much rather be a flashy new paint job and not do brake stuff.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of, and this is just my own theorizing, but it's almost like Hollywood and the political and the media have all kind of merged together. Like, this is theater. This is designed to entertain people. It's not the purpose of him showing up on all these shows is not to show that he's doing his job. It's that he's there to be entertainment for us. That's what political commentary is most of the time. It's, news. It used to be that it was, it would report the facts for an hour every evening and then it was over with. But then the 24-hour news cycle came in and it merged more into the entertainment, because it's got to keep the eyeballs. It's got to keep the advertising flowing and all of that. So the more these three spheres of influence start to merge together, the more these people, they're just going to keep merging or moving towards the entertainment side of things, because that's the easiest job to do. And it's the most profitable. So I don't know what solution there is to that, but that's my view of how it's been progressing.
Well, I will disabuse
get back to the last two paragraphs, though.
Of the profitable. It is easy. I don't know about profitable.
Yeah, well, it's profitable for them.
Yeah, guys, we have two paragraphs left, and we're way off topic. I'm going to remind the audience and you guys, because you probably have forgotten what the actual topic of this last story was how the Biden administration has taken Trump's policies and rebranded them as the Biden policies. So first, we started off with the border policy. So he started building the wall. So it's now Biden's wall. And then Biden says he is going to do more for COVID. He's going to trust the science. He's going to do take COVID seriously, like something Trump didn't do. And in doing that, he's saying he's going to promise 100 million vaccines provided by May 1st, which was Trump's. And the vaccines that he's promising are the ones that Trump ordered. It was Operation Light Speed that was done by Trump. So
Warp Speed.
Warp Speed. That was Trump's. Yeah, that was Trump's policy, and Biden is now claiming it as his own.
Make Trump policy great again.
The only thing he's done differently was to try to do something more than Trump was. He mandated masks to be worn in federal facilities, which they were already required. So he did nothing.
Yep. Let's see here. So there's also the big movement this week was that, if you watch the mainstream media, what happened this week is that Biden announced that he was going to be pulling out of Afghanistan in September.
What a peacemaker, Biden, peacemaker.
That's crazy. That's crazy. It's almost like, it sounds familiar, but like I just can't get over it. Biden is finally he's the one who's finally going to be pulling us out of Afghanistan in September. He decided that it was going to be in September. Dyer, what really happened though?
So what he did do was he pushed back Trump's plan to move troops out of Afghanistan by May 1st. He moved it back to September.
Oh, so it wasn't that he decided that we were going to pull out in September. It was that he delayed a pullout in May. That kind of changes the narrative a little bit, don't you think?
And actually caused a problem, because now he's just broken a bunch of very hard fought agreements with the other powers in that region, particularly the Taliban. So that had threatened, if that we don't hold up our side of the agreement, by leaving by May 1st, that they won't hold up their side of the agreement and will recontinue attacks against American targets. So what's very likely to happen because of Biden unilaterally deciding to move back this deadline to September is there probably will be attacks from the Taliban, which will justify Biden saying later on, oh, well, it looks like they didn't hold their side, so now we need to stay longer.
Well, it's also possible we'll just dump billions of dollars into them and be like, we're so sorry. You know, here's all of our money to apologize for us not leaving when we were supposed to.
Yeah,
I think the agreement with them is completely unnecessary, and it's more political theater trying to make us seem like we're leaving with a win, and really us staying there for another day is just adding to our loss.
Seems like we're probably just going to be there even worse for the next 4 years. I imagine that this time and the next administration, I bet you the Middle East has fallen to shambles and is worse off than it is even today.
I wonder if they're doing it for optics, like they're going to pull out on September 11th just to do that.
I don't know.
Yeah, did I say it was September 11th?
Yeah, you didn't, but they did decide that. Was that picked because it was symbolic, or was it random? Why?
Because it's symbolic, I guess.
I don't know if that makes sense. That's so weird. I don't know what the symbology of that is. It's just weird that you would pick that date. I don't know. I bet you the military-industrial complex is super excited though.
Well, the military top brass actually wanted him to stay indefinitely.
We should just. I know that you keep telling me that they weren't designed to carry them, but hear me out. We should just strap Moabs to the F-35s and just carpet bomb the Middle East with all the F-35s, and then it solves two problems with one stone. Yeah.
Okay, you know what? You've convinced me.
I've convinced Dyer. Dyer's like, I don't care. I don't care if the Moabs don't fit on the F-35s. We will make it work.
No. You don't fit them in the F-35. You attach it to the outside and make it more aerodynamic.
It is merely an engineering problem that can
that would make it more aerodynamic?
Yes.
You could, well, if you just put them in drone mode, you could just pack the pilot area with I'm sure the innards of whatever's inside of the Moab. What is inside of a Moab?
No one has told you that F-35s have
inside
drone modes.
It's inside of a Moab is just a bunch of those little party confetti poppers. It's the big.
It's just filled with piles of foxes.
Oh, it's not a taser. It's a pile of foxes. Speaking of things,
like for every police force to move over, like remove all the tasers and replace them with piles of foxes.
Well, I don't want that to happen because it's gonna be really hard to find foxes because it's really hard to find ammo right now. So they're
throwing foxes at every criminal they run into. Of course, they'll find foxes everywhere.
I think they tried that in the UK. That's why there's so many foxes all over the place. Speaking of tasers, other things that are not tasers is communism, because that would make it our taser.
Because communism is way more dangerous.
Yeah, it is way more dangerous than taser. Also, this adorable otter with a bazooka is not a taser, though he is adorable. A Boeing 777 Max that crashed is not a taser.
You beat yourself. They all crash.
Yes. A potato peeler is not a taser.
You're not showing any of the images, I don't think.
Am I not? Oh no. Well, one of my monitors died. Okay, so
I was seeing.
All right, so communism. Our taser. This adorable otter with a bazooka, which we'll watch again. He's cute. He's not a taser. I know he looks like one, but he's not. He's yellow. It throws me off.
Don't confuse it.
Yeah, the trigger is in a different spot, and it's yellow. I just, it's on my right side and the left. Yeah, but it's easy to confuse it.
You draw an otter completely different.
Yeah, 777 Max, not a taser, and a potato peeler is not a taser. So, in case you were wondering, I don't think anyone else has a list as comprehensive as Direwolf Media of things that are not tasers.
I don't want to see the police body footage of a police officer potato peeling a assailant. I really don't want to see that.
Hey, have you ever caught your finger with one of those potato peelers? You can skin yourself alive with one of those. I mean, they're pretty dangerous.
Yeah. So I would really like to not see a police officer do that to somebody who was resisting.
Yeah.
I'd really, yeah, no. All right, guys. It's been fun. It's been long. We'll see you guys on next Saturday. Thank you, White Line, for joining us. You've been great. Fox.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah. You were so bored without me this week. You missed me.
I know. I was dying inside. All right. We'll see you guys next week. Dire Wolf out.
All right. Be signing off. Thank you, guys.